Something in your body has not returned to normal. You have been waiting for it to settle, waiting for the strange pressure in your head to lift, for the sleep to stabilize, for the sense that you are fully present in your own life to come back. And it has not. Days have passed, maybe more than days, and the world around you has moved on from whatever it was that shifted. And the people around you seem to have returned to their ordinary frequency. And you are still here, still carrying something you cannot name, still moving through your days with a quality of unreality that you cannot shake. That is not a problem. That is the beginning of this transmission. Stay with every word of what follows. We are the Galactic Federation. We are a collective of consciousness that operates at frequencies beyond the range your instruments can currently detect. And we have been in direct observation of the energetic field of your collective throughout the convergence window that recently concluded. And we use the word concluded deliberately because we want to address it immediately. Because the word itself is the source of much of the confusion that is generating unnecessary suffering in the sensitive population in this moment. The window concluded. The event completed. The energy moved through. And yet you are still feeling strange. You are still experiencing the symptoms. You are still waking at unusual hours, still carrying the fog, still finding that ordinary reality has a quality of thinness to it that it did not have before. And the question that is generating the most distress in the field right now is not what is happening. It is why it has not stopped. That is the question this transmission exists to answer. Stay with every word of what follows. What we are about to share has not been transmitted in this form before, and it is the specific understanding that changes the experience from one of concern to one of comprehension. The moment you have this framework, everything you are feeling becomes readable, and readable symptoms are symptoms you can move through, rather than symptoms that move through you. The assumption that most beings in your collective are operating from right now is this: that what occurred during the convergence window followed the pattern of previous energetic events, the pattern of a pulse, something that arrives with intensity, peaks, and then resolves, leaving the system adjusted but settled, the way a wave arrives at a shore, moves the sand, and withdraws. You have experienced previous energy events that followed this pattern. The wave arrived. You felt it. There was an adjustment period. And then a new baseline established itself. And you could feel the difference between who you were before and who you were after. And the after felt stable and real. That pattern is the template your energy body has learned to use when anticipating the arc of integration. And that template is precisely what is generating the confusion now. Because this did not follow that pattern. What arrived during the recent convergence window was not a pulse. It was not a discrete quantity of energy that your system received, processed, and integrated on a trajectory toward equilibrium. What arrived was something categorically different, something that the Galactic Federation wants you to understand, not as a metaphor, but as a precise, functional description of what occurred in the frequency architecture of your planet's energy field. What changed was not the content of the field. What changed was the medium itself. Think of it this way. Imagine that you have spent your entire life swimming in water. You know exactly how water feels, its resistance, its weight, its currents, the way your body moves through it. You know how to read the waves. You know how the water behaves after a storm. You have developed an intuitive model of water that allows you to navigate it with skill and relative ease. And then, during the convergence window, the medium changed. Not dramatically, not violently, but fundamentally, the water did not change. The medium changed into something that has different properties at the frequency level. Something your body has not experienced before, and therefore does not have a calibrated response pattern for. And your body is now in the process of developing that calibrated response, which is a process that takes time, because calibration is not an event. It is a procedure, and procedures have durations. This is the reason the symptoms have not followed the expected resolution timeline. This is the reason that what you are feeling does not match the pattern of previous post-event adjustment periods. The adjustment to a changed medium is not a single recalibration that completes and stabilizes. It is an ongoing process of establishing new baseline relationships between every system in your energy body and the new properties of the medium through which all of those systems now operate. Every sensory system, every processing system, every system of signal and response that your light body uses to navigate reality, all of them are recalibrating simultaneously. And the experience of simultaneous recalibration across every system of the body is exactly what you have been calling strange. But the part that most of you have not been told, the part that changes everything, is still ahead. Do not leave now. The Galactic Federation wants to describe the symptoms you have been experiencing with a precision that goes beyond the descriptions most transmissions offer, because precision is not clinical here. Precision is a form of recognition, and the moment a description matches your experience exactly, something in the system relaxes. Not because the symptom has resolved, but because the system now knows it has been seen, and the relaxation that comes from being seen is not a small thing. It is not comfort in the ordinary sense. It is a physiological response in the energy body, a reduction in the secondary layer of tension that is generated not by the symptoms themselves, but by the isolation of experiencing symptoms that the world around you is not acknowledging, not offering language for, not validating as real. The recognition dissolves that secondary layer, and when the secondary layer dissolves, the actual symptoms become significantly more manageable, because you are no longer carrying them alone in the dark, wondering if something is wrong, wondering when someone is going to explain what is happening in your own body. The strangeness you have been carrying is not uniform. That is the first thing to understand. It is not a single sensation that has been present continuously and consistently since the event. It moves. It changes texture. It concentrates in different regions of the body and the awareness at different times, producing a landscape of experience that shifts faster than the ordinary mind can track. And because none of its individual components seem to add up to a coherent explanation when examined separately, the mind has been working very hard, probably too hard, to try to find a framework that accounts for all of it at once. The mind cannot find that framework because the framework does not exist at the level the mind is searching. The framework exists at the frequency level, and that is exactly what this transmission is providing. What comes in the next minutes addresses each symptom directly and specifically. If you have been carrying any of what we are about to describe without knowing why, without having a name for it, without understanding what it signals, what follows will change that. Stay present for this. The symptom cluster that is generating the most consistent reports across the sensitive, collective, in the days following the convergence event, centers on the head, and the Galactic Federation wants to address it with a directness that does not soften the reality of what is occurring. What you have been feeling in the head, the pressure, the tightness across the temples and the base of the skull, the specific quality of fullness that occupies a different register of physical sensation than an ordinary headache, is neurological recalibration, not a metaphor, a functional description. The brain is a frequency receiver. This is not spiritual language. It is a description of what the brain actually does at the electromagnetic level. It processes frequency information from the environment and from the energy body and translates that information into the experience of consciousness. When the frequency environment changes significantly, the brain must recalibrate its processing. It must establish new baseline thresholds for what constitutes signal and what constitutes noise. It must adjust the sensitivity of its detection systems across the full range of frequencies it monitors. It must reorganize the relationships between different processing regions in response to the new distribution of information arriving from a changed energetic landscape. And it must do all of this while simultaneously maintaining the ordinary functions of consciousness, while you continue to have conversations, navigate relationships, make decisions, move through the practical demands of your daily life. This is an enormous amount of work. It is not instantaneous. It is a physical process occurring in a physical organ, and like all physical processes, it proceeds at the pace appropriate for biological systems, which is measurably slower than the pace at which energetic change occurs. The frequency environment shifted rapidly. The brain is catching up. The pressure and tightness you feel is the physical experience of an organ doing complex, sustained work that it has not done before. It is not malfunction. It is labor. And the appropriate response to labor is not alarm. It is support. The digestive disruption that has arrived for many beings in this window is the symptom most consistently misattributed to mundane causes, to something eaten, to stress, to a passing virus. And while the Galactic Federation does not dismiss the possibility that mundane causes can contribute to digestive experience, the pattern of disruption being reported across the sensitive collective has a consistency of timing and character that places it clearly in the category of frequency-related adjustment. The digestive system is, among its many functions, a sophisticated chemosensory apparatus, a system designed to detect and respond to the chemical and energetic qualities of what enters the body. This detection system operates within a frequency range that is calibrated to the energetic environment of the body. When that environment changes significantly, the calibration of the detection system must shift to match the new environment. And during the period of recalibration, The system sends signals that are genuinely confusing to the conscious mind. Foods that were previously tolerated without difficulty now produce a quality of heaviness or wrongness that has no obvious chemical explanation. The appetite shifts toward unusual foods, or away from previously enjoyed ones, or toward significantly reduced quantities. There is a heightened sensitivity in the gut that is not pain, but is not comfort either. An awareness of what the digestive system is doing that is typically only present when something is acutely wrong, but which in this context simply means the system is processing at a higher level of sensitivity than its pre-event baseline. The gut has been called the second brain, and this description is more precise than most who use it realize. The enteric nervous system of the digestive tract contains more neurons than the spinal cord and processes more information independently than any other peripheral nervous system in the body. When the frequency environment changes, the enteric nervous system recalibrates alongside the cranial brain, and the symptoms of that recalibration are felt in the gut with the same consistency and intensity as those felt in the head. They are not separate symptoms. They are the same process, expressing through two of the body's primary intelligence centers simultaneously. If you have stayed with this transmission until now, you are ready for what follows. What comes next is the part of this message that most beings carrying these symptoms have been waiting for without knowing it, not because it resolves the symptoms immediately, but because it reframes them in a way that changes the quality of what it means to be inside them. Stay with this. The disruption to the sense of time in the days following the convergence event is perhaps the most philosophically disorienting of all the symptoms being reported. And it is the one that the Galactic Federation most wants to address with precision, because the disorientation it produces tends to compound all the other symptoms. By removing the stable temporal framework through which ordinary experience organizes itself, when time feels wrong, everything else feels wrong in proportion. You have been noticing it, not in a way that is dramatic or alarming, but in a way that is persistent and strange. Days that feel longer than they should, hours that pass at an inconsistent rate, moments that seem to expand beyond their clock duration, and others that contract. A general loosening of the relationship between subjective experience and the objective measure of time that the clock on the wall is supposed to provide. The familiar anchors of past and future have softened. The present moment has a quality of thickness to it, as if more is happening in each instant than used to happen, as if the bandwidth of each moment has increased, and the content is almost more than the processing system can hold. This is not a neurological symptom in the clinical sense. It is the perceptual consequence of a consciousness that is now operating at a higher frequency than its previous baseline. Time, as it is experienced subjectively, is a product of the relationship between the frequency of consciousness and the frequency of the environment through which consciousness moves. When the frequency of consciousness increases, when the energy body is vibrating at a higher rate than it previously was, the subjective experience of time changes in proportion. The same interval of clock time contains more experience, more awareness, more perceived content, because the consciousness moving through it is processing at a higher rate. The clock says an hour has passed. The activated consciousness experienced something that felt like 3. This is not distortion. This is accuracy. The activated consciousness is accurately reporting that more occurred in that interval than a pre-activation consciousness would have detected. The sense of time moving strangely is the sense of a consciousness that has been upgraded, perceiving the world through its new, expanded capacity for the first time, and finding that the old temporal framework no longer fits the new rate of processing. The framework will rebuild. It will be built around different reference points than the ones you have used before, and the new framework, when it stabilizes, will feel more native to who you are becoming than the old one ever did. The emotional volatility of the post-event period has a specific character that distinguishes it from the emotional dysregulation of stress or psychological difficulty, and the distinction matters because misidentifying the source generates responses appropriate to the wrong problem and therefore fails to provide what the actual process requires. Stress-based emotional dysregulation has a clear relationship to identifiable triggers. The emotions are responses to specific circumstances, specific thoughts, specific memories, specific anticipated futures. What is occurring in the post-event emotional field of the sensitive collective is different in its fundamental structure. The emotions arising are not reliably traceable to specific triggers. They arrive from beneath the surface of ordinary psychological experience, from a depth that does not correspond to the current circumstances of the life, from a layer of the emotional body that predates the current life in many cases, from stored material that the pre-event system was not capable of accessing, and that the reconfigured post-event system can now reach. This is not regression, it is excavation. The upgraded system can reach deeper into its own archives than the pre-event system could, and what it is reaching into has been stored, in some cases, for very long periods. The quality of these deeper emotional materials is often unfamiliar. They do not have the texture of current life experience. They do not attach clearly to present circumstances. They arrive with a quality of ancientness that is recognizable once it is named. Something old is moving, something that was held in storage because the system did not previously have the capacity to process and release it. And that is now moving because the capacity has been installed. The appropriate response is not to understand this material in the terms of current life psychology, because those terms will not fit. The appropriate response is to allow the movement to complete, to provide the container of sufficient rest, sufficient stillness, sufficient self-compassion for the old material to move through the system without being re-anchored by the mind's attempts to explain it. What comes in the next minutes is the specific knowledge that will determine which experience you have in the remainder of this recalibration period, not which symptoms you experience. That has already been determined by the depth of the change you are undergoing. But whether you experience those symptoms as something happening to you, or as something you are participating in consciously and with understanding, that distinction is the difference between suffering and process. Pay close attention to what follows. The restructuring of sleep in the post-event period is the symptom that most directly compromises the body's capacity to support the rest of the recalibration. And yet the disruption itself is a product of the adjustment, which creates a loop that can feel inescapable without the understanding that breaks it. The pattern presents in two primary ways. Either the onset of sleep is unusually rapid, a descent into deep sleep that happens faster than the ordinary experience of falling asleep, with less of the transitional drifting that typically precedes unconsciousness, or unusually slow, with a quality of hyper-awareness that keeps the system suspended at the threshold of sleep without crossing it, as if the body is too alert for its own rest. For those who fall asleep quickly, the disruption arrives in the middle of the night, typically between 2 and 4 in the morning, with a return to full waking that has a quality of arrival rather than awakening, as if the consciousness has returned from somewhere rather than simply surfaced from rest. For those who struggle to sleep, the difficulty is not anxiety-driven in the ordinary sense. There is no loop of worried thought. There is simply a heightened aliveness in the system, a quality of the cells being too active, too engaged with the recalibration process to shift into the lower metabolic state that sleep requires. Both patterns are the same process presenting differently. Both are the experience of a system running intensive recalibration workaround. The clock that has not yet established new protocols for how to distribute that work between waking and sleeping states. The old distribution assumed a system of a certain frequency. The new frequency requires new distribution. The body is negotiating that distribution in real time, which is why the sleep patterns are inconsistent, different each night, unpredictable, responsive to factors that the mind cannot track. Treat the unusual waking hours as information rather than as failure. When you wake at 2 or 3 in the morning and the ordinary mind wants to treat it as malfunction, make the choice instead to receive it as communication. The system is telling you that something is processing. The system is active. The system is doing the work that is needed. Lie still, breathe slowly, and allow the process to continue without the secondary layer of resistance that comes from insisting the body should be doing something different than what it is doing. That resistance is the only element of the experience you can change, and changing, it changes the quality of everything else. In proportion, the social dimension of post-event disorientation is generating the most isolation in the sensitive collective, and isolation is the condition that most significantly impedes the recalibration process, because this recalibration is not only an individual event, it is a collective event occurring in individual systems, and the field coherence generated by individuals who understand and support each other's process is itself a resource for the process. What is happening socially is this: you are finding it difficult to be in ordinary social spaces with the same quality of ease and presence that you had before the event, not because something is wrong with you or with the people around you, but because the frequency differential between your recalibrating system and the systems of those who did not receive the activation has increased enough to create a perceptible friction in social interaction. Ordinary conversation requires more energy than it used to. Busy or noisy environments overwhelm you more quickly than they did before. There is a quality of foreignness in situations that previously felt comfortable, as if you are visiting a place you used to live rather than inhabiting it. And the people around you notice something different about you, even if they cannot name it. A quality of distance, of interiority, of your presence being located somewhere slightly other than where the body is, standing, These are not signs that you are becoming less capable of human connection. They are signs that the frequency of your field has shifted significantly, enough that your nervous system requires a period of calibration before it can re-engage with the full range of social stimulation at its previous capacity. Give yourself permission for this adjustment. Reduce the energetic expenditure wherever you can. Prioritize the environments and relationships that feel coherent rather than draining, not as a permanent withdrawal, but as a temporary prioritization of the resources the recalibration requires. The capacity for connection is not diminishing. It is reorganizing around a deeper foundation. When the new baseline establishes, the quality of the connection you are capable of will exceed what was available at the previous frequency. The richness that was promised in the recalibration, the expanded sensitivity, the greater presence, the more direct access to the field of shared consciousness will be most evident. First, in relationship. But relationship requires that the system first complete the work it is currently doing. The final piece of this transmission, the one that makes everything else make sense, arrives now. What the Galactic Federation is about to share is not a technique. It is a reorientation that, once received, makes every single symptom we have described readable in a new way. This is what you stayed for. Receive it fully. The practice that the Galactic Federation recommends for this window is not a formal practice in the sense of requiring a dedicated time and a set of instructions. It is a reorientation of relationship to the experience that is already occurring, a shift in how the symptoms are held, rather than a new thing to do in addition to managing them. The reorientation is this: treat every symptom as communication, not as malfunction, not as something to be resolved or suppressed or explained away, as specific, purposeful, precise communication from a system that is doing exactly what it needs to do, and that is transmitting real-time information about its process through the medium of physical and emotional experience. The head pressure is communicating, I am recalibrating here. Provide space. Reduce the noise. The fatigue is communicating, I need resources. Redirect them inward. This is not laziness. This is prioritization. The emotional waves are communicating. Old material is moving. Do not re-anchor it with explanation. Allow it to pass. The temporal distortion is communicating. Your rate of processing has changed. Allow time to reorient around the new parameters. The digestive sensitivity is communicating. The chemical environment of the body is adjusting. Be gentle with inputs. Let the system guide the diet rather than the diet guide the system. The social friction is communicating. Energetic expenditure needs to be managed. Containment is not isolation. It is responsible stewardship of a system in transformation. Each of these communications, received as information rather than as problems, changes the quality of the experience from one of suffering to one of participation, and participation changes everything. You are not enduring something that is happening to you. You are participating in something you initiated through years of reaching, through sustained inner work, through the consistent choice to remain open to a reality that the world around you did not always confirm. The recalibration is the response to that choice. The symptoms are the texture of that response. But before this transmission moves into its final phase, the Galactic Federation wants to address a question directly. The question that has been the loudest signal in the collective field. Throughout this entire period, the question is not about the symptoms. The symptoms have been named. The question is, how will I know when this is complete? What does the end look like? What landmarks signal that the recalibration is resolving? That question is answered in what follows. Stay. The landmarks of completion do not arrive all at once. They arrive in sequence, and each one signals a different phase of the process moving toward its resolution. The first landmark is a quality of stillness that arrives within the head. Pressure, not after it, within it. A moment in which the pressure is still present, but has a different quality. Less like the building pressure of a system under strain, and more like the steady presence of a system holding a new configuration in place. That is the brain completing the first major phase of recalibration and beginning the process of stabilizing the new thresholds rather than still establishing them. When you feel that shift, when the quality of the pressure changes from urgency to steadiness, you will know that phase 1 is complete. The second landmark is the arrival of a hunger, not for food, for expression. A quality of wanting to do things, make things, reach toward things that has been absent or muted during the most intense phase of the recalibration. This hunger is the energy that was entirely consumed by the internal process, beginning to become available for external engagement. It is the first sign of surplus capacity, reliable evidence that the system is developing the resources that engagement with the external world requires. Notice when the hunger arrives. It is a milestone. The third landmark is the most significant and the most unmistakable. A moment, not a sustained state at first, just a moment of feeling more coherent than you have ever felt. Not more energetic, not more emotionally elevated, simply more coherent, more unified across the layers of your experience, more continuous between the different aspects of yourself, more present in the full volume of what you are, rather than in the selected, managed version of yourself that the pre-event system defaulted to. This moment will pass initially and be replaced by the ongoing symptoms of the continuing process, but it will return. And each time it returns, it will stay longer until one day it is the baseline rather than the exception. That day is coming. The symptoms you are experiencing right now are not signs that you are moving away from that day. They are signs that you are moving toward it. The beings who are most intensely experiencing these symptoms right now, the ones for whom the head pressure is most persistent, the fatigue most bone deep, the sense of time most destabilized, are not the ones for whom something is most wrong. They are the ones for whom the most significant recalibration is occurring. The intensity of the symptom is the measure of the depth of the change, and the depth of the change is the measure of the preparation that preceded it. The sustained inner work, the consistent reaching, the years of staying open to a reality that the world around you was not. Confirming, if that description is yours, then what is happening in your body right now is the proportional physical response to the most significant energetic event your system has encountered in this lifetime. It is not easy. It was not designed to be easy. It was designed to be thorough. The beings who are still watching this video after this length of time, still here, still listening, are demonstrating in real time exactly the capacity that the recalibration has been installed to expand. You did not click away when the transmission did not immediately give you the resolution you were hoping for. You stayed because something in you knew that what you needed was here. That knowing, that orientation toward the signal beneath the noise, is the capacity that is being expanded. You are not confused. You are calibrating. And the difference between those two states is everything. Leave the word "still" in the comments below if it has not stopped for you. Leave the word "strange" if the quality of these days has been unlike anything you have experienced before. Your words are not small gestures. They are signals to the next being who arrives at this transmission in their own moment of unexplained strangeness, that they are not alone in it. That is not nothing. That is everything. The Galactic Federation closes this transmission with a message that is not addressed to the symptom experiencing being, not addressed to the confused being, not addressed to the being who is wondering when this will end. It is addressed to the being who, in the middle of everything this period has brought, has still not stopped, has still been showing up, has still been moving through the days, even when the days have felt like moving through water, has still been reaching for understanding, even when the understanding was not yet available, has still been trusting, not blindly, not without the honest acknowledgement of how hard this is, but trusting that the difficulty has a direction, that the strangeness has a source, that the process is real, and that its completion will justify everything that has been required of you to remain present within it. The Galactic Federation has been observing your field throughout this period. We have been monitoring the collective of beings who received this recalibration and who have been carrying it without the context that would make it bearable. We transmitted this message because you needed to hear from something that has been watching that what you are going through is exactly what it looks like when a being is being genuinely changed at a structural level, not adjusted, not improved, not refined, changed in the way that a caterpillar is changed by the process occurring inside the chrysalis. In that process, there is a phase in which the caterpillar dissolves almost entirely, in which the structures that defined it cease to exist, and what will become the butterfly has not yet assembled itself. And if you could look inside the chrysalis in that moment, you would see something that looks like dissolution rather than transformation. That is where many of you are right now, inside the dissolution, before the assembly. And the dissolution is not the opposite of the transformation. It is the transformation. The form is releasing so that a different and larger form can occupy the same space. The disorientation is not the sign that the process is failing. The disorientation is the sign that the process is working. It has not stopped. It will not stop until it is complete. And when it is complete, you will understand, with a clarity that the current moment cannot provide, exactly why this was necessary, exactly what it built, and exactly what the version of you that emerged from it is capable of. We are the Galactic Federation. We see you. We have always seen you, and we are telling you now, keep going. The Galactic Federation has completed this transmission. If what you received here gave shape and language to something you have been, carrying without either. If the strangeness you have been living in finally has a name, then there is one thing that matters right now. There is a transmission waiting for you that was prepared specifically for this. Sequence. For the being whose system is in exactly the state yours is in, right now. It is the one that follows this. Click on it now, not because you should, because something in you already knows it is the next piece. And you have already learned tonight that the part of you that knows which transmission to follow is precisely the part that this entire recalibration has been expanding.